Hopefully I don't look too pale right now because it is extremely foggy outside right now. There's literally no sun and I'm filming this at 8 in the morning. Today's video is a very fun one. As you guys can see, I have stacks and stacks and stacks of books behind me. These are all the books that I read in 2022. I actually read over 100 books, which is insane to think about. I definitely rediscovered my love for reading in 2022 and I read some really good books. Some were kind of meh, others were downright horrible, but you know what? That is the life of a reader. You can't win them all. Sometimes you're just going to read some really crappy books. But since I feel like I've talked about these books throughout 2022 constantly, I'm not going to spend too much time describing every book. I'm just going to go through them very quickly. Again, I've read over 100 books, so I don't want this video to be 100 years long. If you're looking for more in-depth reviews, definitely check out my monthly reading wrap-up videos. Also, these books are no particular order. I literally just took them out of my bookshelf and placed them on my dresser. No idea which books I'm going to be pulling out to describe first. Oh, fitting that we start this video with this book. This is The Stowaway by James Murray and Darren Wearmouth. I never know how to pronounce his last name. I did not enjoy this book at all. The synopsis made it seem like it was going to be such an interesting read. It was about a serial killer, which whenever I see serial killer on a book, I'm like, I'm reading it immediately. It actually turned out to be a child serial killer, and I don't like reading about crimes against children. I wish the authors were more upfront about the type of serial killer the person was, and I just wish they weren't so graphic. So I think I gave it like a 2 out of 5 stars, or maybe a 1 star. I don't really remember. Next up, we have All I Want for Christmas. This is actually a very recent read for me. This is by Maggie Knox. This is Enemies to Lovers and Fake Dating. I actually really enjoyed this book. I think it's a perfect book to read during the holiday season. It was pretty funny at times. It was pretty fast paced. I finished it fairly quickly. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And then after many months of you guys begging me to read this book, I finally read it in December, and that is Archer's Voice by Sheridan. Absolutely love this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It tugged at my heart. I love Archer. He's one of my favorite book boyfriends of all time now, and I'm definitely going to be picking up more books by Sheridan in 2023. Next up, we have The Santa Suit by Mary Kay Andrews. This was another holiday read. I did not enjoy this book at all. I thought that it was pretty pointless, pretty unrealistic. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I actually have a reading vlog with this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It is a horror thriller book based on a haunted house, very similar to the Amityville Horror Story. It was pretty spooky. I read it while I was home alone, and honestly, I got spooked out. If you're looking for a good horror slash thriller book to read in 2023, so definitely check out this book. Definitely one of my best reads of 2022. Oh, this book, People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Okay, so this was the third Emily, was it the third? I think it was the third Emily Henry book that I've read. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars if I remember correctly, but it could have definitely been a 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed Emily Henry's other books so much that I just wanted to be nice. This is Friends to Lovers, and I'm just not a fan of Friends to Lovers. I honestly realized that mid-2022 after reading so many books that had the Friends to Lover trope and hating all of them. I think if you like the Friends to Lovers trope, then you'll really enjoy this book, but I did not, and I didn't like the big twist, the big reveal at the end. I thought it was pretty stupid. I will say that I really did enjoy the characters, Poppy and Alex. They were so cute together. I love Poppy's personality. I am so sorry. I know that is a favorite here on YouTube. Another Emily Henry book, but one that I absolutely loved, was Book Lovers. This was actually the first Emily Henry book that I've read. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars if I remember correctly. I know that a lot of people hated on this book because it wasn't really romance. Like, the romance element was a subplot. It was mainly focused on the main character's, Nora's, personal growth. I can understand why people who were expecting more of a romance didn't like it. I just love the banter in this. I love the two main characters. I thought they were super cute together. 4 out of 5 stars. In 2022, I read the whole off-campus series by Elle Kennedy. So that was The Deal, The Goal. These are in no particular order. The Score, The Mistake, and The Legacy. I will have to say that as the series progressed, it got worse. My favorite book in the entire series has to be the first one, The Deal. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but honestly, now that I think about it, it definitely deserves 5 stars. I still think about this book till this day, and I read this one in early 2022. It's friends to lovers, a little bit of fake dating. The writing was just perfection. The next 3 books in the series, The Score, The Goal, and The Mistake, I didn't really enjoy these as much. I think I even DNF'd the 4th book in the series, The Goal, just because I did not like the couple. All of these books are definitely spicy, so keep that in mind. The Legacy is the final book in the off-campus series, and it actually features all 4 couples from the other 4 books, and it catches up with them 3 years after graduation, I believe. Yeah, 3 years after graduation. It was okay. I also don't think it had to be written, if I'm being honest. Okay, next up we have The Axe Hacks by Erin Sterling. So this one I read during Halloween, I believe. It's a cute little romance book that features magic, it features witches. It is a little spicy towards the end, which I was not expecting. For some reason, I thought this was going to be YA. I didn't really connect with the 2 main characters all that much. It was pretty funny in certain parts of the book. Overall, I just thought it was kind of meh. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars if I remember correctly, but I do think it's a cute book to read during the fall season. Next up, we have The Dad Romantics by Ashley Poston. I really enjoyed this book. I can't tell you what rating I gave it. Maybe a 3 out of 5 stars, maybe a 4. It follows a author who happens to be a ghostwriter, who also happens to be able to see ghosts, and her editor ends up dying, and she has to figure out a way to help him cross over. It sounds weird, but it just works, I promise. Then we have a book that I do not recommend for you guys at all, and that is Something from Tiffany's by Melissa Hill. I thought I was going to enjoy this book. It's actually another holiday read. I did not enjoy it at all. I thought it was pretty lame, was very slow, didn't really like any of the characters. Kind of wish I never read it, if I'm being honest. I did watch the movie on Amazon Prime and enjoy the movie 10 times more than I enjoy the actual book. I feel like I need to go a little bit faster. Next up, we have The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This is another friends to lovers fake dating book. I thought because it had the fake dating element that I would enjoy it, but I actually didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I still would recommend it though, because if you are into friends to lovers and you love the fake dating trope as well, then you'll probably really enjoy this book. And it's also a closed door romance, so there's actually no spice. And then next up we have The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I can never pronounce his last name. I am so sorry. This is a thriller. I really enjoyed it. I'm not gonna lie, I did feel like it was a little slow to start. Then it definitely builds up and the pace quickened, and then the big twist at the end was a huge shocker for me. I did not see it coming at all. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have 2 books that are pretty much the same, but from different POVs. Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. Obviously, both of these are by Jamie McGuire. The 2 characters in this book definitely had red flags. I feel like both of them were pretty toxic for one another, but I still enjoyed the book. I don't think this portrays a realistic relationship by any means, but it still was a fun book to read. I did pick up the second book, which is from the male's main character POV. I actually never ended up reading the whole thing. I got to page 84. I have a bookmark here, and I never finished it because it was so similar to the first book that I felt like I was reading the same book all over again. I'm just going to pretend that I read the whole thing. Okay, next up we have A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a Greek retelling of Persephone in Hades. I definitely think it included too much spice and not enough romance. This is the first book in a series, and I just did not enjoy this book enough to continue the rest of the series. So that should tell you something. I think I gave it like a 3 out of 5 stars if I remember correctly. A Proposal They Can't Refuse by Natalie Ganya. I really love this book because the main character is Puerto Rican, the female main character, and I'm Puerto Rican, inclusion, and I love seeing diversity in books, especially in romance books. If you are looking for a romance book that also has a lot of diversity, it has humor, it's very cute, the two main characters are adorable together, the side characters are a blast as well, then definitely check out this book. And I think this is Natalie's debut novel, and she is actually continuing this series and coming out with a second book, I believe this year in 2023, and I'll definitely be picking that book up. Next up, we have Bully by Penelope Douglas. This was actually my first and only Penelope Douglas book of 2022. It's kind of like childhood friends to lovers and enemies to lovers. I honestly could never see past the fact that the male main character bullied the female main character to the point where she had to leave their school for a year, and then she came back and all of a sudden he was in love with her. I just couldn't see past his horrible behavior enough to give him a chance. I do want to check out Penelope Douglas's other books, which I plan to this year, but this one was just meh for me, if I'm being honest. Another very meh book for me was Look What You Made Me Do by Elaine Murphy. This is a thriller, or it's meant to be a thriller, but honestly it was such a boring book. Followed two sisters, one of who was a serial killer, and then both sisters are being targeted by another serial killer in the area. And again, the plot sounded amazing, but it just fell completely flat for me. I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have another thriller, Falling by TJ Newman. It involves a plane getting hijacked by its own pilot, and the pilot has to make a decision whether to crash the commercial airline or to save his family. The book started off with a bang, literally a bang right in the prologue, and then it just failed to deliver the rest of the way. Next up, we have Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. I absolutely loved this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the main character. She was so sassy. She didn't take any bullshit from anyone. If you enjoy the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, definitely check out this book. The main character is literally a female version of Jack Sparrow. Next up, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney. I despise this book with a burning passion. If I could give it 0 stars, I would give it 0 stars. That's all I'm going to say about this one, because I don't want to waste any more time talking about this book. If you know, you know. Mexican Gothic by Silva Moreno Garcia. If you are looking for a good gothic horror book, then definitely check out this book. It takes place in the 1950s. There's also a little bit of romance among all the horror vibes, so really enjoyed it. I'm kind of hoping that they make a movie out of this book. Next up, we have Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This was a pretty quick read. It is very short. It's like 160 something pages. It's basically about a woman who works in a convenience store. Everyone around her thinks that she's weird because she doesn't fit in perfectly. Everyone, including her family, kind of questions why she's working in a convenience store. She actually tries to quit, tries to change herself, and realizes that she doesn't want to be anyone else. She just wants to be herself. I thought this book was very unique. Then we have Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. Absolutely love this book. It is a domestic thriller. It is very triggering, so I definitely would say to look up the trigger warnings before you pick up this book. There is a lot of psychological abuse that happens in this book. My only complaint with this book is that the ending didn't really provide any closure for the main character or for me as the reader, but overall I still really loved it. 7 Dirty Secrets by Natalie D. Richards. This is another thriller. Can't tell you too much about this book because I don't remember much of it, other than the fact that I didn't really enjoy it and I never thought about it again. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is my first Lucy Foley thriller. I thought it was okay. I thought it was a pretty basic thriller. I was able to predict all the twists, all the big reveals. So another book that kind of just fell flat for me. A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. I read this in November and I honestly can't tell you much about it. I do remember that it is a dark academic type of book. It also has LGBTQ plus representation. It also has like witches and ghosts, things like that. So I do think it's a good book to read in the fall. Next up, we have Shatter Me. This is obviously the first book in the Shatter Me series. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a solid first book of a series. It definitely was addicting. I finished it in one sitting. I actually think I read this during a 24-hour reading vlog. I still haven't read the rest of the books in the series, but I do want to. It is a dystopian type book. It also has a little bit of romance, so if that is your thing, definitely check this one out. Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. I'm pretty sure I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, but to be honest, I don't really remember much about it. I do remember that it tackles depression and family trauma, which is why I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, because it's a very deep book, but I never thought about it again after I finished it. So is it deserving of 4 out of 5 stars if I never think about it again? I don't know. A book that lives rent-free in my mind is Verity by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 5 stars. I've talked about this book a million times on my channel, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It is a dark romance, not everyone's cup of tea. Just know that you should read it if you haven't read it yet, but before you do, make sure that you look up the trigger warnings on this one because it is quite dark. Another great book that I absolutely loved was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was actually my first Christina Lauren book and I absolutely loved it. It is enemies to lovers, fake dating. If you are looking for a good romantic comedy with beautiful scenery, definitely read this one. Another Christina Lauren book that I enjoyed but didn't really love as much as The Unhoneymooners was The Soulmate Equation. It is fake dating as well. I didn't really connect with the main characters. Like, I thought the couple was adorable, but that's pretty much it. Never thought about this book ever again, but I enjoyed reading it while I was reading it. A Christina Lauren book that I did not enjoy as much was Love in Other Words. This book is so loved here on YouTube and Book Talk, but honestly, it just wasn't for me. Again, I think it's because I don't like the tropes that are featured in this book, but it is childhood friends to lovers, second chance romance, alternating timelines. Don't remember much about this book aside from the fact that I didn't really like the female main character all that much. The big reveal of why the two main characters stopped talking to one another was kind of like anticlimactic for me. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people love this book. I just wasn't one of them. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Honestly, I love this book so much. I've talked about it a million times on my channel. If you haven't read this book yet, what are you doing? Go read it. The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Honestly, I feel like this book is very overhyped. I thought it was cute, but I did enjoy the movie a lot more than I enjoyed the book. It is enemies to lovers, kinda. They're like enemies for like 5 seconds. So if you like that trope and you like reading about how short the main character is every 5 seconds, then you'll love this book. Next up, we have the Slammed series by Colleen Hoover. So we have Slammed book 1, Point of Retreat book 2, and This Girl book 3. I honestly give the entire series a 5-star rating because I loved it that much. Thought it was really cute. I loved how it tackled grief and moving on. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Not much to say other than the fact that you should read it because it's beautifully written. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Does this book need any explanation? I think this is the first Colleen Hoover book that I read, if I remember correctly. 2022 was a very long year for me. I don't think it's the best Colleen Hoover book out there, even though this is her most like recognized book. I definitely think that she has better books out there, but I did enjoy this book. Then we have Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. This follows Dean and Sky. It took me a while to actually like Dean in this book because he definitely had a lot of red flags, but I did enjoy the book and it had me crying like a little baby. Honestly, most Colleen Hoover books have me crying like a little baby. Then we have Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I didn't really enjoy it all that much. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars and never thought about it ever again. Next up, we have Confess, again by Colleen Hoover. Another book from her that I just didn't really connect with. I thought it was just okay. It had me tearing up in the first couple chapters and then I kind of was over it. Okay, wow, this is definitely the Colleen Hoover pile. Bear with me. I read a ton of Colleen Hoover books in 2022. November 9, similar to Heartbones and Confess, I gave November 9 a 3-star rating. I just thought the plot was super unrealistic. I didn't really like the two main characters all that much. I couldn't really connect with their love story. Another very popular Colleen Hoover book that I'm just like meh about. Maybe Someday is probably my least favorite Colleen Hoover book out there. This one was just very controversial in the fact that the two characters are involved in emotional cheating, which any type of cheating, emotional or physical, is wrong. So I couldn't really see past that to enjoy the book. I did like Ridge. I thought he was kind of cute, but the whole emotional cheating thing wasn't my jam, if I'm being honest. And then we have Layla by Colleen Hoover. This is a paranormal romance. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. Not as much as Verity, but I thought it was a decent read. I definitely would recommend this this book in the fall during the Halloween season if you want like spooky vibes. Then we have Christmas at Silver Falls by Jenny Hale. Absolutely love this book. This was another holiday read for me. Honestly, I felt like a big cup of hot cocoa. I always say that when talking about this book because it just gave me the best warm fuzzy feelings, and I feel like this author doesn't get enough recognition, at least here on YouTube and on Book Talk, and honestly she deserves all the recognition because this book was beautifully written. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I gave this book a 5-star rating. Absolutely loved it. It was such a heartwarming coming of age story. There's a little bit of mystery, a little bit of romance. I cried like a little baby throughout reading this book, and no, I still have not watched the movie. I need to. Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is the first book that I've read from Alice Feeney and I absolutely fell in love with it. It is a great thriller. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I find that thrillers sometimes can be super predictable, but this one was not predictable at all, at least to me. I love the writing. I love how fast paced it was. If you're looking for a good thriller this year, definitely check out this book. Next up we have One of Us is Lying. This is the first book in the One of Us is Lying series. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a decent YA thriller. There's actually a show on Peacock based on this book. It is quite different from the book itself, but I still thought it was pretty decent. They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. The ending is in the title with this one, but I still very much enjoyed it. It also has LGBTQ plus representation. Even though the ending was super predictable, I still cried. The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. This is definitely one of the best romance or romantic comedies that I read in 2022. I absolutely loved the writing in this book. It was actually hilarious. It had the right amount of spice, the right amount of romance. The characters were also very diverse. If you're looking for a good rom-com, this is the book for you. Honestly, I should do a whole video just recommending rom-coms because those are my favorite types of romance books and I've read quite a bit, so let me know if you guys are interested in a video like that. The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This is another book that I never really thought about again once I finished reading it. It's about 2 main characters who live together. They're roommates, but they've actually never met, and they end up falling in love with one another through post-it notes. So when I read the synopsis, I thought it was going to be super cute, but it just ended up feeling meh to me. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. So this is the sequel to The Worst Best Man. I enjoyed this book for what it was. I enjoyed the writing, but The Worst Best Man is definitely superior in my opinion. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. Honestly, this book has everyone divided. Half of Book Talk loves it, the other half absolutely hates it. I fall into the group that absolutely loves this book. I gave it a 5-star rating. I thought it was such a cute little rom-com and I still think about this book. Next up, we have the Folk of the Air series. I read The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. This is a YA fantasy series and honestly it was highly disappointing. I think mainly because it was YA and I'm not a huge fan of young adult. It's very rare when I enjoy a YA book and I didn't know that this was YA going into it. I did enjoy The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing way more than The Cruel Prince. Honestly, I think I give the entire series a 3 out of 5 stars. Another YA series that I read in 2022 was the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is book 1. I didn't really enjoy this one. I thought that the big twist was very predictable, but so many of you guys kept urging me to read the second book in the series and I did. Good Girl Bad Blood. Absolutely loved this book. It is hands down the best book in the entire series, and because I enjoyed this book so much, I decided to pick up the 3rd book in the series, As Good as Dead, and honestly this book was just a giant piece of disappointment. I didn't really like Pip's character development in this book. A lot of things went down and it didn't make sense the way they went down. So not my favorite book in the series, not my favorite murder mystery series in general. It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the sequel to It Ends With Us. I love the fact that this book focused on giving Lily and Atlas their happy ever ending. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. You guys already know how I feel about this book. Absolutely loved it. It's one of my all-time favorite romance reads. It involves fake dating, friends to lovers. Honestly, this book did no wrong in my eyes. Eyes. Its sequel though, Love on the Brain, absolutely hated this book, did not like it at all. I honestly felt like this was a cheap replica of Love on the Brain. It was trying too hard to be Love on the Brain when I was expecting it to have its own identity. Next up, we have The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. This is a horror book. I think I read it during the fall Halloween season. I enjoyed it for what it was. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a good little horror slash thriller that kind of reminds you of every slasher film out there, like Halloween, Scream, Friday the 13th, those types of movies with those like slasher film tropes, then you'll definitely enjoy this book. Next up, we have My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. Grumpy Sunshine. It also involves a little bit of murder mystery. I thought that the murder mystery was going to be a little bit more prominent in the plot, but it really wasn't. It focused mainly on the sexual chemistry between the two main characters and their desire to get it on. That's really what this whole book was about. I wasn't really into all the spice that was in this book. I kind of found the spice a little cringy. Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. I thought this was a pretty cute little romantic comedy. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't anything like amazing or world-changing for me, but I did enjoy it. I did read another fantasy series. This was actually the first fantasy series that I've read in my entire life, and that was the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Absolutely loved this series. Honestly, I never get tired of recommending it. It involves A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the first one, A Court of Mist and Fury, I think is the second one. Third one is A Court of Wings and Ruin. The fourth book in the series, A Court of Frost and Starlight, was probably my least favorite in the series. It doesn't really add anything to the series in general, but the first 3 books are definitely my fave. They get better as the series progresses. If you haven't read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, please read it. Even if you're not into fantasy, give it a chance, because I thought I would hate fantasy and this series made me love it. Beach Read by Emily Henry is my all-time favorite Emily Henry book. I gave this book a 5-star rating. It's kind of enemies to lovers, but not really, because I feel like the two main characters are only enemies for like 2.5 seconds. But I love the writing. I love the banter between the two main characters. Augustus is probably one of my all-time favorite book boyfriends. So I did read 2 other Tessa Bailey books in 2022. I read It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker. It Happened One Summer is more of enemies to lovers, and Hook, Line, and Sinker is more friends to lovers. I actually enjoyed Hook, Line, and Sinker, even though I am not a fan of that trope. But my favorite book of this series, hands down, is It Happened One Summer. Then we have Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne, who was the author of The Hating Game. Honestly, this book felt very flat to me. It was very boring. I struggled to get through this book. Didn't really like the characters at all. Then we have Priest. I recently talked about this book in my top 10 worst books of 2022, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this one. If you enjoy your books with a lot of spice, then check it out, but if you don't want to read just spice, then sit this one out, because this definitely is more spice than actual plot line. Then we have Anna Holidays by Christina Lauren. This was another holiday read. This was a book that I thought had a lot of potential based on the synopsis, and it fell flat. The only thing I did like about this book was that it has a time loop trope. I've never read a book where the main character was stuck in a time loop and had to figure out how to break the time loop, so I enjoyed that aspect of the book, but aside from that, really didn't do anything for me. One of Us Is Next is actually the sequel to One of Us Is Lying. Like I mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed One of Us Is Lying. This one, not so much. I felt like the first book in the series was 10 times better. This one just felt a little too predictable. Wasn't a great sequel in my opinion. Next up, we have One Day in December by Josie Silver. This is another very recent read. It took me forever to finish it. If you know me, I finish books fairly quickly, sometimes in one sitting, and this one took me a couple of days. Felt like it just dragged on and on and on, but it does have a lot of good reviews on Goodreads, so I would say check this book out because it seems like I'm in the minority of not liking it. Then we have Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. This is another Greek retelling that is more spice pace than actual plot line. I feel like this book was trying too hard to be 50 Shades of Grey and failed miserably. Next up, we have the Selection series. So I read the first 3 books in the Selection series. The first one being the Selection, the second one being the Elite, and then the third one being the One. I will say that this is a very YA series, but the writing was super addicting, so I kind of flew through these books. However, once I finished the series, I kind of was like, that was a giant waste of time. I definitely feel like I would have enjoyed it a lot more had I read it when I was maybe 16 years old, not 27. It wasn't written for my demographic, let's just say that. And then I also read the Inheritance Game series. This entire series is written by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The first book is The Inheritance Games. The second book is The Hawthorne Legacy. And then the third and final book is The Final Gambit. This is a romance slash mystery type of series. It is YA, at least I think it's YA. I actually enjoyed The Hawthorne Legacy the best. I felt like there were just a lot more mysteries to be solved in this book than there was in the first one, and then the third one kind of felt like it should have never been written. Didn't really like what the author did to a couple of the main characters and didn't really like the ending. So definitely my least favorite book in the series, but I still would recommend this series because I think it is really good, and since I enjoy the first 2 books, I'm just going to pretend the third one was never written. Another series, wow, I read a lot of series this year. I actually don't even know what this series is called. Let's just call it the Kiss Colton series. So the first book is The Kiss Colton, and this is definitely the best one. Absolutely fell in love with this book. The second book is The Bride Test, and then the third book is The Heart Principle. All the characters in this series actually have autism, so I really like the representation in the book, and Helen Huang was actually diagnosed with autism as an adult, so I love that she writes books from her perspective and from her life experiences. These aren't based on a true story or anything, they're just little romantic comedies. And then this is the final physical book that I've read this year, and that is The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. I can't really tell you much about this book aside from the fact that I remember it was really slow and I was wondering when it was going to end. It's kind of like a detective murder mystery series. Didn't really like this book enough to continue the series. Those are all the physical books that I read this year, but I also read a ton of books on my Kindle. I read the entire Detective Josie Quinn series by Lisa Reagan. No, the series itself has 15 books in total, and I think I read 14 books out of the 15. If you're looking for a good detective crime series, definitely check out this series by Lisa Reagan. It's hella addicting. The plot twist will always catch you by surprise. I have never guessed a plot twist. All the books have kept me at the edge of my seat, and I literally have read each book in one sitting within a couple of hours because they're that fast paced that I don't even want to put them down. I also would recommend The Perfect Marriage by Elena Rose. I've actually seen it a lot more lately than when I read it. When I read it in the summer, I think it was, I didn't really see anyone talking about it, but now I literally see this book everywhere. It is a domestic thriller, murder mystery, and honestly, the ending had me shook. Like, I did not see the ending coming at all. And then I read Sold on a Monday by Christina McMorris. Honestly, this book was pretty sad. It follows a photographer who is trying to right a wrong because he took a picture of 2 kids being sold, but he never got the names of the 2 kids, and eventually the kids were sold, so he goes on a mission to find the kids. It's just like a whole lot of a whole lot. I think that those are all the books that I read in 2022. That is pretty much it for today's video, you guys. I am sick and tired of hearing my voice. This video has taken me forever to film. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what was your all-time favorite book that you read in 2022. I would love to know, and if you enjoyed watching, please give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.